This morning, everybody. Like Stuart said, my name's Ian Anston. I'm the trial ground supervisor here at the STRI. Also with me today is Richard and Lee from Campey Turf Care. What I'm going to start off is basically, this is the Campey Turf Care SandCat trial. Basically, we've got the objectives really. I'm going to talk about what the objectives for the STRI to look at after the treatments from the SandCat trial. Basically what we're looking at is the water movement through the playing surface, and then the actual water retention in the ground, and the actual surface hardness of the area. And then also to look at the actual lines that are created when you do the actual treatment. So we're looking at basically how long it takes for the lines to have no effect on the ball roll, and basically how long it takes for them to basically heal up and to totally disappear. So they're the sort of things we're looking at. I'll tell you a little bit more about the area before I get into too much. This is just normal golf green maintained area. The sward is brown top bent and annual meadowgrass sward, so it's like a lot of golf courses, general sort of area that they have. The soil underneath is just the trial ground normal soil that we have here, which is basically a sandy loam. So also added to that is there's no extra drainage on this area. It is just basically soil, there's no drains in it. Any water movement that goes through is just natural movement through the soil and away through gravity down the slopes. So there is no actual added extra help through drainage. Move on now to the trial itself. Basically we have 4 trial areas. There's 2 trial areas that have the SandCat treatment, and then 2 trial areas that are untreated. The only thing that we've basically added to this as a treatment is a Vision Pro and a transition spray afterwards. That was done on the northeast side and on the untreated, and the south west side on the treated ones. And basically we did this treatment basically to see if it had any help and benefit on the heal up of the ground after we'd done the treatment. So that's what we did the actual spraying for. So actually moving on to the treatments itself, what we did first was to hollow core all the areas. So both sides, even the untreated side, gets hollow cored and all the cores taken away. And then we were doing the treatment with the SandCat. We've basically done 4 treatments now. We're in this final year, so this fourth treatment is this final one, and we're on as final measurements for that 4th year. So basically we've done the hollow coring, so we've done the SandCat treatments. Basically down the hill. The first one we did down the hill, then the second one we did at diagonal, and then an opposite diagonal to the third one, and the final one we've done down the hill again. To be honest, we could have gone 90, but the opposite way, totally 90 degrees, but we just decided to go straight again down the hill. So they're what we've done to the actual area as the treatments. After that, like I said, both areas are mirrored. Even though they have a SandCat treatment, they're mirrored completely. They're not doing anything different. So basically any fertilisers, aeration, watering, rolling, they're getting exactly the same. So the only difference really is the SandCat treatment. That's the only thing. So that's all we're really looking at. So basically when we've done this treatment, it comes down towards the STRI to start doing measurements and actually measuring what we get from doing that. And to do that, we're doing basically like 6 sets of measurements. So we're doing a line measurement, a smoothness and trueness measurement, a surface hardness measurement, a penetration measurement, and also the volumetric water reading in the ground, so how much water is in the ground. And then finally we've got the infiltration of how quick the water goes through the ground. So as we were saying, we've got 4 areas that we're actually using. So in each one of the measurements that we do 15 replicas in each block. So on the untreated we're doing 30 replicas for that block, and then 38 on the treated block altogether. This is basically done over an 8-week intense period after we've done the treatment. So we'll do it for 8 weeks solid, doing the treatments each week, and getting the results from that. So what I'm going to do is basically move on to the actual treatments themselves really, and what we do, and tell you a little bit more about them. To start with, we've got basically the line measurement, and this really is just down to a visual assessment, is the line measurement. It's basically a scoring measurement from 1 to 10. So we'll do 1 basically being the ground, when it's been done, originally done the treatment, it's open, you can see the sand lines, that's basically a 1. 5 measurement is when basically the point we're at now at the moment, where it's healed up over, you can't see the line, the actual sand anymore, it's healed up, but we can still see the lines, you see the green lines. And then finally a 10 is when you no longer can see the line, so it's completely healed up and you basically wouldn't know you've done the actual treatment itself. So that's basically the line scoring that we're doing. The next one we do, which is the smoothness and trueness. To do this we have to use the STRI trueness meter, which we run over the areas 90 degrees to the actual treatment that we've done. So we're basically doing a worst case scenario of the ball roll, so it's running directly over the lines to what you've actually done your treatment. So do as runs along it, and this basically will look at the bobble, the chatter effect of the ball bouncing up and down the lines, and all with the smoothness, and then the trueness is the actual snaking effect of the ball as it runs along. So they're the actual measurements that we're taking, and the piece of kit that we have can measure in hundreds of millimetre how much it's moving over a set distance, so it can tell you what you actually get in movement. The next measurements we're doing is the surface hardness, and to do that we need this piece of equipment, which is a cleg hammer, which basically measures in gravities the actual hardness of the ground. So basically on your scoring system, the higher it is, the quicker the energy is dissipating, so it's harder, it's dissipating quicker when it hits the ground, so you get a higher score, whereas if it's softer, it takes longer for the energy to go, so you get a lower score. So basically it's the matter of us lifting up this, which is a half kilogram weight with a sensor. Right, let's go on soon. And it's just a matter of dropping it from the line, so you've got a setting, you drop it at, taking the reading, so we've got 77 there, just move it around a little bit, 75, so it's fairly consistent, 79, so we're getting a bit firmer. Next one is move on to the untreated area, so this is where we start to see if there's a difference between the firmness with the treatments. That's 72, so it's lower. 68 again, so basically talking 10 gravities there, difference between two, so it's showing that the actual treated area is a lot firmer than the untreated area. The next sort of assessment we do is the actual penetration. To do this we use a Longchamp's penetrometer, which is basically a 1 kilogram mass weight that's dropped onto a 1 centimetre probe, and it will just basically hammer it into the ground, and it then gives us a measurement in centimetres and millimetres how far we've gone into the ground. So what we do is, like I say, we've done 15 measurements on the area, but what we do with this piece of equipment is we do 4 drops in the same spot to see how far it goes in the ground, and take measurements over 4 drops to get that reading. What we find as well is, because of the treatments, what we've done is the weather conditions have a big effect on this as well. The wetter it gets, the bigger the effect we get difference between the two areas. That's what we've found. So it has been a big difference for that. So that's a big effect by using them two pieces of equipment. The next piece, what we're doing is the actual volumetric water content in the ground, so how much moisture is in the ground between the two areas. To do this we have a piece of equipment called a FETA probe, which is basically a 60mm probe that you put in the ground. It's measuring 60mm of the surface, saying how much water there is to soil in the ground, basically, and give you in volumes how much there is. So we do that over the area exactly the same as the other items. And then finally what we've got is the water infiltration. To do this we have to use basically infiltration rings, which is a big metal ring with a little one inside. We have to do this last because we're doing the trueness meter testings. This is quite a disturbing treatment to the ground. It makes big rings in the ground, so it affects actually what we're doing. So we leave it until the last thing we've done. So basically what we do is we fill it up with water up to a set point, and then we will let it settle for half an hour to an hour, just because if you do it, just basically hammer it in and fill it with water, there is already air in, it isn't really wet, there's air there in the ground, so it's going to go quicker anyway. Also we take the temperature reading as well, because this can affect the actual way the water goes through the ground, because the cooler it is, the thicker it gets, it takes longer to actually go through the ground, so we take the temperature as well. So from this really, I think the main thing we do now is move on to the actual results. To start with, we've got the soil water content, which is based using the FETA probe, which tells how much water content there is in the ground. Basically what we've got is this probe, basically 50 is saturated. That's why when it gives you 50%, that's basically saturation. It's 50 water, 50 soil, so it's giving you saturation. What we've found between the two areas is that the difference between the treated to untreated is 5.3%. So 5.3 units, so that's basically like 10% difference in the actual water content still in the ground. So it is showing you that it is draining through the ground a lot quicker and allowing water to actually get away basically, and there's always a lot more water staying in the untreated area. What we found also is it actually grows when it gets wetter. When it gets wetter, the actual difference, it changes more, so we actually went up to 5.8%, so it's showing when it rains, it's actually helping even more. You actually get more benefit from wetter conditions. The next one we did results, this is really the biggest one really, is the infiltration. We've basically done 4 treatments. So the first one we did, off the first reading, we had a 50% difference between the two areas and infiltration. This time, basically, we're a lot higher than that. On the difference between the two areas we got was 9.3 millimeters. That was over an hour. That's how much difference they dropped in water. The treated area was letting through 31.5 millimeters in an hour, whereas the untreated was letting through 12.3. And this basically works out, where we were at 100%, this works out 170% difference in water infiltration, which, to be honest, on a soil area, it's just massive. It's a huge amount of water that you're letting through. And what this basically does is allows you to play your games. If you've got really wet conditions, you won't be playing on this area, but you will be playing on this area, because the amount of water it allows it to get through and keeps it firm. So it's working really well. The next basically readings we got is the penetration. What it showed basically over the two areas is that to start with, we didn't have a lot of difference really. It started off a lot less than what we have. So it started off where it was 1.9 millimeters, 1.9 mil of it was dropping into the ground. That was the difference between the treated and untreated. So that's how much less it was going into the ground. So it was showing it was getting harder. And then after the second treatment, it started to move a bit. So we got to 3.5 millimeters. And then after his third treatment, we're now at 6.4 millimeters. So it's quite a big difference. It's actually allowing it to get in the ground. So it's obviously getting a lot firmer is the ground that you're at between the two areas. The surface hardness, which we're doing with Clegg, was very similar, to be honest. To start with, there wasn't a lot of difference in that between the two areas. But as we moved on, after this third one, we're now basically at about 6% difference between the two areas. As I showed you, there's about 10%, so we're a little bit lower on that, but there is quite a difference in the actual surface hardness between the areas because it is drying out. The one thing, the big difference is obviously we're drying out now, we're getting dry days, so it's drying out, so there's getting less difference between the two, but the biggest difference we found was when we actually had wet conditions. It made a lot bigger difference because of the drainage to the area. The smoothness and trueness, to start with, obviously we're creating the lines. To start with, there is actually an effect in the actual trueness to start with. There is the actual smoothness, sorry, to start with, there's a bobbling effect to start with, but after about 3 weeks we were starting to reduce that quite a lot down to 4 weeks, and we're not really having that big a difference between the two areas. So it didn't take a lot of time to actually bring it back to the area that's been basically untreated. On the trueness, which is sort of the snaking effect, it basically didn't have any effect at first. They're basically the same, it didn't have any effect. But what we found is over time, as we did the treatments, the actual trueness started to improve. So you're basically getting a better area as time goes on. And basically what that's down to is all the top dressing and seeding and stuff that we're doing is making the area better. So not only you're putting that much into getting it back to the thing, you're actually making it a better area than what you originally had. So it's basically making a lot better area. So they're basically the actual treatments what we've got. Like I say, what we've really got out of it, I mean, it's been a fantastic trial, and when it's coming to its end now, but there's so much from it, and what it's basically come down to is shown that actually through the treatment of the SandCat, it's just basically means of if you are going to do a treatment in really bad wet conditions when you aren't playable, this is more, it's going to be playable. It's going to be a playable area compared to your unplayable area, because at 3.1 mil over an hour, you're going to need a heck of a lot of rain to get to the point where it can't get rid of that amount of rain. So it does make it basically a playable area. So you get through them bad winter months where it's wet, and it becomes an area you can use again. So from that, I'll pass you on to Richard, and he can show you some equipment.
Good morning. We're just going to take a wee saunter up the top here. We'll just practically show you how the machine looks, how it works, and the job that we do initially before you get to this finished state. Really up here, what we want to do is to show you the sort of practical aspect of what Ian was talking down by. We've heard the theoretical, we've heard the differences that this machine can make are absolutely outstanding. But to actually show you what the machine looks like, how quick the operation takes. So we've got a SandCat here with us, and we're going to give it a wee run just shortly. The SandCat effectively allows you to sand slip fine turf. Fine turf was always this area, you could put a drainage system in, but you couldn't really put anything on the surface because the plant was too big. Not anymore. With the SandCat, we can put this behind a 45 horsepower tractor, and it allows you as a turf manager to put 6-inch deep sand slits at 6-inch centres. On average, we're looking about 3 tonnes of sand will go into each green. So we're still looking at a considerable amount of product going in to the surface. How we get away with getting that in with effectively not taking anything out is by hollow coring. There's a reason for that. We've got two 12mm coulters at the back. These are what put the sand into the ground. They're 12mm thick for a reason. They're as thin as we can possibly get them, so the surface disruption is kept to an absolute minimum. When these are coming through the ground's got to go somewhere. So we always insist, when you're putting this machine through your greens, you must hollow core as a starting point. Once you've hollow cored, on comes the SandCat. On average, you'll probably knock out 3 or 4 greens a day, as I say, injecting 3 tonnes of dry sand. Because the coulters are 12mm thick, you must use dry product. It's only gravity which is pulling the product into the green. Lee will now demonstrate what the machine does and give us a wee start and get to the end of the run. Sand's that dry, it's just fallen to the bottom of the slot, but you can see it's effectively a 6-inch slot, 5 inches of sand, so the sand it's in where it needs to be. So as you can see, when you come into a golf course and do this, you're always going to get maybe a bit of pushback from the golf course members, because all they're seeing is these white lines suddenly appearing on their putting surfaces. But very, very quickly, by taking a brush over it, that sand starts to disappear almost immediately. The playing surfaces, they're actually all right. And that is us just done a run through there just right now. But as I say, you must hollow core the surfaces before you come in with the SandCat. Generally, when I've gone and done demonstrations, we always get the worst green. Absolutely guarantee we'll get the worst green. It's the green that gets closed first. It's the bane of every golfer's life. So if you do take this onto a golf course, take it onto your worst area. Try it in your worst green. Any pushback that the members give you will very quickly disappear when they see that green is remaining open right into the winter time. Some people say it's a single pass product, but we're now seeing the improvements keep on getting better and better. 50% infiltration rate, you think, well, that's as much as it's going to get. It's not going to get any better than that. But by golly, it does. We've got some customers that have seen the job here and think, right, let's run this twice at one go and run at 90 degrees. It's up to the individual, but I think that the improvements from one pass are probably quite sufficient, and I think what really would hold most people back is the amount of sand that you're putting into the golf course. You can take the coulters off and just use the machine as a shockwave. It's not just a single trick machine. It's a double system, I suppose, where we can use it as a shockwave and use it as a means of injecting sand into the green. So in this machine here, we've got something which is injecting sand and improving infiltration rates, and you're going to get comments from members. But the machine beside it here, the R2G2, is quite different. I think sometimes for a long number of years, it rarely does a revolutionary machine come to market, and I think safely we can say that this is one of them. Effectively, what does it do? It allows you to aerate your greens when you know they need to be done, and you're not governed by a golf course membership that's saying, no, you can do it in the spring, or you can do it at the back end, or you're then having to manage aeration by putting in wee tiny microtines and taking heave off. So you're always having to manage the amount of surface disruption. What we've got here is the ability to release a controlled amount of air over a controlled period of time at a certain depth, depending upon the tine size that you're fitting, and really disrupt root zones, disrupt the soil underneath, pump as much air into the putting surface as possible, but creating absolute minimal surface disturbance. We don't really have ideal conditions here because we've had to hollow core it for the SandCat, but ideally with the R2, what you want is a completely intact surface. So the air is encouraged to remain in the root zone. So the R2G2 has really been on the market now for a couple of years, and we keep finding new avenues, new areas where people are trying it. One of the obvious areas is able to aerate golf greens in the middle of a playing season. One of the other areas we had was in football pitches, is aerating down to undersoil heating. Getting these tines, the working depth of this machine is adjusted by the length of tine that you fit, but getting these tines made up so that you're maybe an inch or so above undersoil heating, and you can now aerate down 2 inches below the tip of the tine, is what you're going to find. How many times do you use it? We're finding guys that own this machine are taking it 4, 5, 6 times a year on their golf greens. It's not something that you have to fit in to other operations. It'll just come naturally. One of the guys comes back into the shed, you get a spare couple of hours, take the R2 out and go and knock out a couple of greens. It really fits in to your existing management, your existing staffing levels. It just bolts in beautifully, and it gives you a tool that can aerate greens without any pushback from any of the golfers. So we'll give her a wee run. Yeah, thanks, I'll cover it out, aye. You're going to do your usual party piece, aye. It doesn't need the engine to make it work. The whole thing runs on compressed air. What the engine's actually doing is just keeping the big tank of air underneath the belly full of air, but it's also running the hydrostatic system. The hydrostatic drive allows you to have as close a centre, a hole pattern as you want. So you're in charge of how close or how far apart you actually are going to put the treatment. If you know you've got a particular bad area, a walkway or something like that, then you maybe think, right, I'm going to give this a right good blast. It would be the absolutely simplest piece of kit that you'll have in your shed to work. To make it work, you've got 2 switches. You hit them at the same time and that's it. We've got another couple of machines with us today. One of them I would quite safely say is the finest overseeder you could ever run over your golf course. It's the Vredo Super Compact. It drills seed in at a 35mm centre, and it will handle from fine bent right up to large fescue seeds. We've got a number of golf courses running it, so maybe take a wee wander over. We've done a wee area we can show you. We're looking at a product here which will deliver up to 95% germination rate. It will drill bent, so you can right down to that fine bent seed, or it'll drill in large fescue. And the reason why we're getting that is we operate a double disc system. The double disc system cuts a slot, and then the seed drops down between the double discs and will always go to the bottom of the slot. So the germination rates are absolutely incredible. Seed centres are a nice tight 35mm, but even getting these discs to go as close as that, you can see we need quite a bit of weight to get these discs to cut into the ground. But we'll see this machine working on some of the finest links golf courses in the UK, getting used on greens, tees, fairways, the lot. One customer in particular remarked that he had it for 3 years. He's never put a spanner on it. It's one of the best machines I've got in the shed, was the comment I got. So, an absolutely super piece of kit, which is the overseeder. So you can see we've done a wee bit here. Very, very straightforward. Land drive, seed always goes to the bottom of the slot, hence large germination rates. We've got a fourth machine. I'm just being mindful of the time here. How are we? Where's Ian? Are we okay? Right. 6 minutes. Okay. We brought another machine with us. Now, we didn't have enough tractors, but the last machine we brought with us is called the Field Top Maker. Now, the Field Top Maker is a piece of kit that was brought to market a number of years ago, and we're just talking about Campey Turf Care always trying to be on top of innovation, on top of new practices. And this was brought to market a few years ago, and it was designed to take the tops off football pitches. So soccer, football, rugby, whatever, get to the end of their season and they want to take the surface off and get rid of all the annual meadow grass. So what we do is we set a rotor with a digging head on it. That allows these guys to maybe dig down to some 25-30mm, remove the surface off, overseed, top dress, and get a brand new, young, vibrant playing surface for the following season. So that was its original design, that was its original purpose. It's hugely recognised now as normal practice for football clubs to use this. Sometimes you might hear the term phrase mowing. That's effectively a digging rotor set quite shallow, but most groundsmen now are setting the machine 20mm and more and taking a real surface off, getting the annual meadow grass and the root gone. However, we've really listened to problems and thought, where else can we adapt this? So we developed a 1.2 metre, we've developed a new rotor. You'll see this machine now being used on tennis courts at Wimbledon. So the last tennis ball is hit and in this goes and it takes the top off centre court. But we had to look at its application in golf courses. So in golf courses with a digging rotor on, if you've got a real problem fairway, you can dig it up, take the surface off. If you get that thatchy, horrible layer that you just can't get rid of, you can scarify it and scarify it. There's a tool here that will take it off. And it's a real dramatic thing to do, such that we've done 2 golf courses and we did half a fairway at each, one in Switzerland and one in Ireland. And we were only allowed to do half the fairway, dug the whole thing up, and then the membership after a short while were inquiring as to why we just didn't do the whole fairway, because the half that we dug up was so good. But you know, it's not all golf courses that are needing to dig up their fairways. So again, we had to adapt and look what other sorts of heads can we fit in this that will facilitate it into the golf course market. And we've developed the universal rotor. Universal rotor will allow you to fit a 10mm, a 5mm and a 3mm blade, dependent upon how much you want to take off your surface. This has now been fitted with 3mm blades, and this will scarify 18 golf greens down to 25mm in a morning. Because the machine is running all the time, you're not having to run away and empty a hopper. All you're doing is having a gator or some such machine at the side there, catching all the spoil. That allows you to get the greens back into play nice and quick. As you notice, there's 2 rollers on it. When you're scarifying in golf greens, these rollers are too far apart. There's a mid-mounted roller fitted on it, so you do get following of undulations. Floating top link as well. So it's a real versatile piece of kit that can be used in all aspects of sports turf. So thanks very much. I think the fourth results. The quickest way you're going to see them will be on our website, campeyturfcare.com. That's getting uploaded with, it's not just a sales beast, even though it's predominantly about sales, but there's a lot of information on there about what we're up to, new machines that we're trying to bring to market, things that we're testing. So have a wee look at the website. If you want a demonstration of any of these machines, give us a wee shout. Everything's available for demonstration.